everybody, and welcome to another edition of Average Superstar TV. I am your host, Lauren Lepre, and we are back in the music world this week. My guest, this is going to be one good show because this is a homeboy of me, which I actually didn't even know it was. This guy has a lot of bullet points that happened in my life, and we are going to get to that. But this guy is a filmmaker out of Pennsylvania. This guy also is heavily involved with the Pennsylvania hardcore scene and has a long history with it, from putting shows on at the Factory in Wilkes-Barre to Manus Green and back. This guy's up to Harvey's Lake. I mean, this guy had a fork in the ground everywhere he went up there, and is still going. He has multiple films out, but the three that we're going to be covering tonight particularly is What It Is. We also have in-house, the Todd Terry story, and then the one that I'm most pumped about, Pennsylvania punk rock story, which is covering a lot of the areas of the Lehigh Valley. James Callahan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Awesome. You're welcome. And anybody on YouTube has any comments, feel free to drop them. As always, will be answered. So, James, you gotta listen. You were around before I was up there. My born on date, the hardcore scene was 1993. I had a really cool friend named Perry who was kind of going, and what we were doing is he was hanging out with one of my other friends, and then I tagged along. So what we were doing was we were going to the Viewmont Mall on a Friday night as a big group and meet up with another, up to about 10 kids. It's kind of a mixed and matched every week. Right. And then from there, we would go walk up to McDonald's, eat food I would never eat anymore. And then we would get in the car and we would go down to the Factory. And at the time, I'm wearing stonewashed jeans and the Soundgarden shirt. And I thought I was going to this heavy metal show. And I walked into the Factory and my life changed in this cage, because at the Factory there was a cage. The band, and even though this is a metal band, but was a mixed show. It seemed to be like hardcore, little rap. There was even kind of a hippie group maybe mixed in there. But the band on stage, Wallace era, was Internal Bleeding. And I just remember freezing, like, what's happening? There's kids flipping off the cage back into the crowd. I've never saw kids doing spin kicks or punches. I just kind of went to the corner and I was like, I love this. I'm also scared I might get beat up. For now, I'm going to go stand in the corner with my friend Henning, and we just watched. We can't get in trouble over here. We shouldn't get in trouble here. Let's just watch this tribe. And I was in love. And here I am still doing this, in 2026, the time of this recording. So, and then I found out that was recently, those were your shows. So, James, dude, thank you so much for putting a huge footnote into my life.
Glad I could be there for you, man.
Yeah. So, could we go back? I guess I would love to go into that and then into when you became a filmmaker. But could you just go? Can we start off with the hardcore scene?
So, I came home from college in about 1990, and okay. I had gone to the Philadelphia Art Institute for music and video production and marketing and some other things. However, I was hired via phone by Tom Greco, the guy who owned Factory Concerts and did concerts at the Genetti's and Market Street Square. And he was opening up this amphitheater that I was really interested in working at. At that time, the Factory was dormant. It was dark. It was open when I was a kid, but people were shot there. It was a dance club. It attracted a lot of diversity, which caused a lot of rift and problem.
I remember there was a lot of hip hop there too, right? It was kind of anyone could play there.
No one's parents were cool with them going to the Factory, so that's why we all went there. Even if we didn't like the music, there were lots of girls there, there were lots of people to look at and new friends and what have you. So it was dark for years, almost 20 years. So while I was doing these shows at the lake, I asked Tom, the guy who owned the building, what he was doing at the Factory, and I kind of still had the itch to do some underground stuff because I was doing shows like Live and Fuel and and that shit's dope.
You did the live show, as in the band from York at Harvey's Lake, right?
Yeah.
Dude, oh my gosh. I actually have the flyer for that. I know I have the flyer for that.
Yeah.
I never made it, but
yeah,
it was a small one, like a quarter of a paper. Yep.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So, I mean, we were doing really fun shows, commercial rock shows. I even did stuff like Crisscross and MC Light. We did Def Leppard up there, Jackson Brown, all kinds of country acts. But I wanted to do something a little more aggressive and a little more underground, even, and it wasn't it wasn't exclusively hardcore and metal. We, like you had mentioned, from time to time, we'd have some like more cafe style coffee house acts pop up, like Freight Train. They were just a banging act. Charles Javier is still around playing music today.
I remember like Mesh. I remember No One's Hero. Like I remember a lot, but like I also remember kind of bands that sounded like Nirvana. Some would sound like Helmet. I remember we had a hippie group up there at one point, and it almost seemed like because the scene was growing then, but there was no true scene. So I think you kind of had to throw some glue against the wall and see if you could pull people in and keep it going, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So that Internal Bleeding show sticks out to me because Ossuary opened up for them. And during the Ossuary set, these kids were flipping off the cage, and this kid kicked a fogger, one of the big old oil-based foggers, off the ceiling, off its perch, and it swung and hit the cage, and it electrified like 15 kids off the cage. I was like, wow, I could see that. I already read that headline in my head.
Yeah. It was,
but it was the 90s, and people didn't care about shit like that then.
No. That, so you had that go. Why did that end? Because it seemed like this was probably 93-ish for me. It just kind of seemed eventually it just did the club.
I wasn't like truly fulfilled where I was at factory concerts. I didn't like some of the tactics and some of the things they did, and I just kind of wanted to strike out on my own. And that was when we decided to open Mantis Green. So between 93 and 94, I worked on this giant space that was a second story across the street from Top of the Slope and Happy House.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that Happy House?
No,
it was an underground skate place in a warehouse in Wilkes-Barre.
Okay.
So we worked on this place for a year. We booked out the opening weekend, which was the Bad Brains on the Friday and Edgar Winter Band on the Saturday. And 3 days before our opening, the city planning came in, and they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, the first of the year, some codes changed, and we forgot to tell you, so you can't open up." So we spent a year there. We lost the money and the time, and then found someplace closer to the square, and that's the spot that was on Northampton and South Main. That was eventually the Mantis Green Coffee House.
So James, and now I was kind of looked like I was rudely looking over here doing something, but I did something and I found gold. Okay, there's a reason I'm doing it.
All right,
James, cool. I gotta see if I can pull this up for you.
Yeah, boy.
That's one of yours. This is the original flyer I picked up. I'm trying to see if I could match this right, but yeah, who cares? Ossuary.
Yeah, so I'm gonna
says the underground. Yep. Look at the price, everybody. I think it's $8.
Yeah, so I'm gonna match your Ossuary flyer with.
I'm sure you're gonna crush me with anything.
So what? An Earth Crisis.
Wow.
Option at the factory. Yes. And the picture is Jamie White, who eventually became the lead singer of Burial Ground, but he was the bass player for So What at the time.
Yes, he was.
So yeah, I have these flyers going out to you. I pulled some winners out today.
Actually, dude, thank you so much. Yes, as you can see, I collect them. I have them.
Dude, this is the Bad Brain show that never happened at the club that never opened.
Gotcha. And then you also had an infamous. Everybody knows about the Mantis Green, but you booked Marilyn Manson, and he showed up and didn't like the size of the venue, so he wasn't doing it.
Yeah, well,
with Clutch, I didn't realize Clutch was with them. Wow.
Well, Clutch came back eventually and honored their obligation. We eventually became friends. I ended up directing a video for them years later.
Cool. Yeah. So
But
yeah, man.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
Marilyn Manson were douches.
yeah, they were rock stars then. They just kind of
Well,
broke through, right?
from the time that we booked it to the time that they came was about a year and a month, and they had blown the fuck up. They went from being a medium-sized room act to being a small arena act or theater act. So when they walked into my coffee shop, and to boot, they had us alter the place, out
Make
of
it
our
look
pocket,
different.
big cage in front of the stage and everything. But their contract and their rider were just insane. They were like man-sized pantyhose, a kitty litter box in his dressing room, all these like sex toys, and all this, like all this weed and mushrooms and all this other shit that I had kids run around and kind of gather what I knew, but he wanted heroin, and I didn't even know what fucking heroin was, dude. Like, so I did not get him heroin, and he did not play, and that's that.
So, what happens here? So he didn't honor his contract. You paid money and put it into your venue to accommodate him. What happens?
Well, not only did I pay his first half, I had to refund everybody that bought tickets if they wanted it. So that night I offered the makeup show because Clutch were kind of embarrassed, and the Nixons were playing that night too, and they were embarrassed, and they promised to come back, and they did, and they crushed it.
There was no way that Clutch and the Nixons could have played without him. I guess
I guess through contractual obligations they were banned from doing the show. But then the dudes from Marilyn Manson went down to the square and got a room at the Ramada and taunted kids from the window and had them come down and kick my windows in. So then I lost money because there was damage that night as well.
So was there any legal action he could have took?
He drug it out until I was a New Yorker and I started to not care.
Yeah.
Like he drug it out almost 15 years.
Wow. I didn't know that part, man. I didn't know about the windows. I do remember I was in the area. I was in the area, but at that time, particularly, like you said, like pantyhose on the dude. Like I was like, I ain't going near that show. I was like, what are they doing playing there anyway? But then that's all I heard was from the hardcore scene was like, yeah, he walked in and said he ain't playing because it's, he's too cool and it's too small. Which the part of me is like, isn't that cool though? Like you being a small arena and like you're gonna play this little. Isn't it kind of cool? Like to come back and just do something small.
Yeah.
For one night. For like
because for them it's nothing, but for anybody that would have been the 500 people that would have been in that room, it would have been the talk of their life.
Mm-hmm.
But another strange thing, he wanted to put a chicken in a cage and put the cage in the bass cabinet, and I was like, it's just not fucking happening, dude.
Yeah, that's just total animal abuse. Total animal abuse. Yeah.
It's just not happening. Period.
Especially with your crowd, because you had especially then. You had a lot of the option extend guys and all stuff like you had a great vegan following. They're not going to be happy with that. They showed up at that one.
Right. Yeah. But
I remember everybody though. Like obviously you got your options, your burial ground. But I remember like Murphy's Law. I remember Shutdown. I remember Earth Crisis. Like
Sheer Terror. Sheer Terror actually played there the day that Roy Orbison died, and we always played Roy in the coffee shop, so we had a bunch of candles lit and what have you. And Paul Bearer came in and he was like, "Yo, what is this place, like a cult or something?" And I was like, no, Roy Orbison died today." He goes, "No, Roy Orbison died?" He's like, "No, that fucked me up, dude." And like when I see him now, he'll be like, "Yo, we spent Roy Orbison's death day together, bro."
Crazy. What, Kurt? Why did the factory end?
The factory ended because I just no longer got along with the landlord, who was my boss, and I no longer wanted to work at like in the bar scene. I was kind of sick of it. I burned out on it, and not that I didn't go to bars at the time. I just didn't want to work around drunks at the time. So, and it was always my dream to open the coffee shop. Have something that. I don't know. We would bring in Tibetan monks and Native American flute players and puppet shows, and I did I read story of kids on Sundays, like stories that my friends would write. So the space was.
Didn't I might be wrong. Did Elliot from Guardrail and them try to do wrestling in there or something at one point?
Well, I think that he brought that to me, and I would have let Elliot do anything. I still have a Guardrail sticker on one of my boxes behind me.
Keep
the highway safe for your children.
Yeah, that's one I'm always saying to Elliot and Don when I see them. And I see Elliot more at the drive-in up there, but boys, like put Guardrail on Spotify or YouTube, please. Crazy. What happened with Man of Screen? What was the final end of that?
Well, another slumlord, and we had issues with the roof, so we were kind of like putting band-aids on bullet holes on the third floor, patching, and we had a bunch of bins up there and we would dump them and what have you. But the floor weakened and it eventually came through the second floor, and we were dealing with it there. And then someone told the building inspectors, and they came in, and it was coming in pretty good, and they condemned the building. We had a couple hours to get out. So I got on the news.
A couple hours to get out.
Yeah. Wow. I got on the news at the time because the internet was a baby. And I said, listen, if you've ever had fun down here, please come down and give us a hand. We had pianos in there and all kinds of artwork and shit. And the oddest, most beautiful group of humans showed up. Like these dudes that had a pageant called the Pandora's Box Playhouse, and they were drag queens, and their motto was, "What you see is not always what you get." But they came down in the morning, so they weren't kind of like glammed up. They were like kind of glammed down, but they were big dudes, and they were carrying a piano. I have a picture of skateboarders on one side with their skateboards underneath the piano, and these two big drag queens on the other side, like pushing it out. It was sad, but it was exactly what the coffee shop was. It was this amalgamation of beautiful, weird humans that all liked each other.
Yeah, man. Both of what you did there was great, and I loved the location because I loved walking up the square. I always remember going up to that ghetto donut shop.
Oh yeah,
in between
Dirty Donut.
Yeah, Curry Donuts. Is that what it was?
No, the Dirty Donut, where all the donuts it tasted like fucking cigarettes.
Yeah, in the 90s when you don't have a lot of money, that 50-cent donut is like, yeah, let's go.
Well, truthfully, I tell my wife all the time, there was not much going on in Wilkes-Barre on South Main Street. There was Wendy's and Boscov's, and then Gallery of Sound and us.
Yeah.
Well, there was that little weird kind of fetish club for a while called the King of Clubs. Did you ever see that place?
No,
it was on the other end of the block.
Okay.
And they opened up at like midnight and did like what they did. It wasn't really my scene.
I get you. Not everything not everything's for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So let's I definitely want to get into your Pennsylvania punk rock story, but let's back up here, dude. What made you even want to get into filmmaking?
Well, I went to college for music video production. I loved it. I was enthralled from the very first minute MTV was on. I could remember feeling weird when I saw Billy Idol's White Wedding video. I was like, man, it's really dark. It made me feel a certain way. So I went to college for it. But at the time, the cameras blew. So and lights were really dangerous to work with. So I worked on a couple big videos. I worked on Will Smith's Summertime video and some other stuff from the time, but doing my own videos just never really met my own expectations for the art I wish to create. So I went into what I loved as equally as much, and that was the live performance stuff. So I stayed in either live tour management or I've owned a bunch of venues. So when I was ultimately sick of being around crowds as well as drunks, my wife convinced me to do the 100% creative life. I had been working part-time with a company out of the Poconos called My Good Eye, and it's Dave Brodsky. He does videos for every metal band in the world, probably 700, 800 music videos since he started. Wow. But mostly Relapse and Metal Blade stuff. So anything that you've seen from like Revocation or I Prevail or any of that stuff. It's probably him.
That's amazing. So that was your lead in, and then you got more into documentaries as time went on.
Yeah, because the opportunities presented themselves, but it was also personal goal stuff. I'm in my 50s. I don't think that I want to do heavy metal videos for the rest of my life. But I love that.
Yeah.
But the opportunity to tell the story of that Lehigh Valley time in the late 80s, early 90s was special. When the scene first started developing down there, all of us, like Mac Ray said on your show, we didn't have to go to City Gardens. We didn't have to go into Brooklyn to L'Amour's. We didn't have to go wherever to see shows. We could go an hour away from home or less and see Suicidal Tendencies, see the Circle Jerks, see fucking Sabotage, on a Monday night. And that was dope for me. But there was a certain element of danger for people who weren't from down there and part of certain political and tribal movements down there, i.e., there were a lot of skinheads, both sharp and fascist and Nazi. And then there was a group of skinheads that we found out through our investigation who would just fly the flag that would piss the most people off that night. So seriously, and the leader of that kind of clan is the dude who asked me to do the film because he wanted a bit of redemption. He wanted to say he was sorry for ruining a scene. And he has this opportunity, this wild opportunity. A lot of the dudes that we interviewed, it was clear what their political stances still were, but it was never mentioned. Might have been something they were wearing, might have been something they were listening to, but we knew where they stood and we didn't really talk about it. However, the film gives about 30 people the opportunity to tell their Pennsylvania punk rock story. So it's not.
I'm way looking forward to this because for the guy, at the time I started recording the Pennsylvania hardcore documentary in 2012, I actually interviewed 200 people exactly on the nose. Wow. About 17 of those interviews didn't air. Either they asked to be taken out because they got carried away talking trash. Right. And I was like, dude, okay. I'm like, I didn't want to push anything. Or they looked a little bit too much like a deer in headlights. I feel stupid. I was like, yeah, dude, if you want. But I had to I only knew so much. I knew a lot, but there was a whole lot I didn't know. And like your area and stuff so I'd be doing an interview with someone and they'd mention these clubs. They mentioned the people that ran the shows. I'd be like, awesome. I don't know them. You mentioned them. You need to now pass the puck. Oh, you should call. No, you're going to call for me, and I'm going to be right here. Because I'm just some dude calling. It's like you've got to copy and paste and kick the pail down the road a little bit. So it was a really awesome learning experience. But you said you interviewed about 30 people, right?
Oh no, we've interviewed about 80 people. However,
okay, that's still an excellent number. And where I'm going with this question, tell me, dude, you probably had a really good like me, probably had a lot of people like, what time? Boom, I'll be there. But did you find a good handful or handfuls of people like the last minute, like, I don't feel like doing the interview today. And I'm like, dude, I just drove 90 minutes. I'm about to pull up. Right. Yeah, I'm not ready to do it now. I'm like, so did I. I had work. I got in the car after work and drove to you, and now you're going to tell me I can't come in? And I'd be driving home, and I'd be throw, and then the next day I wake up, you're like,
well, we didn't have that so much.
I mean, like, in the interview, I have to do it. Like, I would go back.
We didn't experience that as much with the interviewees as we did with Thomas Waltemeyer, the dude we're making the film with. Although he was a great producer in that he would get us a location in the Lehigh Valley somewhere, Reading, Allentown, Easton, and put me in touch with the contact there. And all his people were excited to do this and tell their stories. So they showed up. Thomas sometimes wouldn't show up. Sometimes he'd show up, the first time we ever worked with Thomas, he offered his place up in the Poconos for us to shoot the Bad Luck 13 scenes at. and Evil Jared from the Bloodhound Gang showed up to be part of it. This dude's just not around. I got 30 people there. We got fucking burning props and we're blowing shit up, but he's just not there. And Evil Jared's like, I'm getting a little worried about him. He goes, I'm going to go in his house, break in and see if he's okay. The dude was in his bed because he had given himself a concussion at 5 o'clock that morning, drinking whiskey and driving his truck in his field. And he hit his head and was knocked out and then made it back to his bed. And then just forgot that he had 30 people showing up to shoot a video.
So you just wake him up and that was it. Just
yeah, he came out. He came out after a while, but it set the tone for years of my wife and I just waiting for Thomas.
Okay.
You know, he's this lovable dude. He's this lovable dude, man, but he's chaotic as fuck. He's like a professional arsonist. He's made fire for Slayer and Bad Luck 13 and you name it. Oh, Turbo Negro. He's been with CKY and down at that what's that Skatopia. He's the guy that burns everything down there. So he's a chaotic dude. And but to his credit, he set up dozens and dozens and dozens of really great people that became really great interviews.
So my flick is Pennsylvania hardcore, so I tried to do Philly to Pittsburgh and everywhere in between.
Oh, it's so much, man.
It was so, but basically, I'm trying to set up the base hit. They pitched this back to you with my question, but I basically the whole movie is like you're in the first part of Philly, then hey, we're in the Lansdale scene. Now we're in between. Now we're in Scranton Wilkes-Barre. Now we're in Pittsburgh. Now we're in Erie. But I can't stay there long. It was one of those like, where's the scene? Where are the clubs? Who are the bands? Who are the promoters? Let's talk to some of the bands on the next one. But one of the biggest areas was the Allentown. Like I was very intrigued over that. I could tell you I was never at Airport Music Hall. Honestly, when I jumped in back then, I told you I was scared of the underground. I'm pretty sure if I saw skinheads, I was going to run the other way. So like this was an area of like, I want to know more about, and I was happy to interview Sam and learn a lot, but like the fact that you're covering this more. So like, is this documentary just on that, or is it other surrounding areas as well? And
well, it's just the Lehigh Valley. So the stories are centered around Scarlett O'Hara's, Oliver Jay's, and Airport Music Hall mostly. However, there was a Gigi Allen show.
In there too?
What's that?
Wally's.
Oh, Wally's, and there was I was just going to mention there. Gigi Allen show at Wally's is one of the stories because one of the kids helps Gigi Allen escape when the cops are.
Did you happen to interview Walter Phillips? He'd be a good guy for all that.
It doesn't ring a bell. No,
I will link you to him, but he lived at all that. He was one of the guys I used to lean to cover that area. But like he's in his 50s, late 50s. I'll link you up. I'm sure he'd be glad to do it if you're still recording. I don't want to.
Oh yeah, man. The first dude we interviewed is this really interesting cat. He's in his 70s. His name is Johnny Loftus, and he sings for a circa 1970s punk rock band from Pennsylvania called The Clap, and he's still performing right now. Awesome. I just posted a little teaser with him on it the other day where he tells his story about him hanging out and this band comes in from out of town and they were asking about laundry and shit. So he took the guy to go and do laundry, and when he got back, it turns out that he was Angus Young from AC/DC, and they were playing with them that day because AC/DC at that time in the 70s was punk rock.
Yeah.
And they considered themselves punk, and everybody else did too.
Do you have footage from Airport Music Hall?
Oh yeah.
Good for you.
From backstage, we have footage of Waddy. We have Waddy getting maced, and then we have the backstage footage. We found the people that were backstage with Waddy, so we have all the backstage stuff of him cleaning his eyes and wanting to talk to the skinheads. And we've collected a lot of data. We have a lot of content, and almost think that it might be a 3-part thing. 360s.
I would tell you maybe you should do that because I think that part's really intriguing, and it's crazy because when I interviewed Mac Ray, it said he when I pulled the short clip, which was really about 11 minutes long from that, and I talked about the airport music hall. If you go to my YouTube page, those comments underneath, it was like so funny because it was like it was cut down the middle. It was like scary, terrifying, blah blah blah, and then the other half were like, it wasn't bad at all. And some people were even saying there was no Nazi stuff at all. I was like, what are you talking about? And then it's funny because John from No One's Hero hit me up privately and said, dude, I know 80% of the people doing the comments. He goes, they weren't at those shows.
Right.
It's like I was giggling. I was like, okay,
well,
funny.
Much in the way that you had said that the beginning of your existence in the hardcore scene happened. That film, the film that we're talking about right now, was brought up to me because of Mac Ray's comments on your show. That's how it was pitched to me.
Really? So my podcast inspired this movie, huh?
Yeah, it pissed off Thomas Waltermeyer because he said he was the dude that I told you fronted up a gang of dudes who just really liked to fuck with everyone. His best friend's an African-American dude, and he hung out with guys with like swastikas on their chest. So it was just they just wanted to like offend people. So this dude said to me, I was with HR. I know for sure there was no Nazi flag in the crowd because HR would have freaked out. He goes, it was the first time I ever smoked Kind Bud. I know this for sure. He goes, I'm not saying they weren't in the parking lot, but I know for sure there were none on the floor of the Allentown Airport.
I took all that with not for a second that Matt would have misled or anything, but
neither do I.
I know Matt's memory. He could be combining like 4 different shows. So I even put it in the comments. It's like he could have been. They didn't do that the Bad Brain show, and then I heard sick. I don't know, but I heard Sick of It All got beat up at one point down there.
I have all that footage.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I heard. Is that where they?
I mean, make no mistake. There were Nazis there, and make no mistake, they flew flags and did shit in the parking lot and sig heiled. A bunch of them one time in front of Mucky Pup kept doing their goose stepping and hand saluting and yelling sig heil. So they stopped the song, and the lead singer was like, "Hey, listen, these guys are looking for their friend Kyle. I think he's sick. They're looking for sick Kyle." And they just made asses out of them, and they just seemed to disappear. But I saw the same thing happen with Chaka Malik and Burn. The guys are in front of them doing their dance, and Chaka had something witty to say, and then flashed a little piece of his butt, and bam, they were gone. But make no mistake, they were there. Mm-hmm. However, I don't remember ever seeing a flag on the floor. But in the parking lot when we were trying to hang out and have a good time and skate around, 100%.
So you've got
35 years ago, man. Transposing those type of memories, especially when that imagery is so strong and so potent, I can see how Matt might remember that.
Gotcha. So you got actually Nazi skinheads with flags, maybe inside the place and outside the place. Just curious, like what's happening with the Allentown police? Aren't they? Are they like? Everybody like they're not talking to Sam saying you can't run this, or is the community like not caring, or are they caring? Like what's happening here?
Well, it's funny you should ask. We have it straight from the horse's mouth. Both Sam, all the security who are now in their 60s and 70s, and the cops, they had a little bargain where security would get somebody outside and a paddy wagon would be there. And as soon as they were outside, cops would grab them and throw them in. And once a paddy wagon would fill, they'd take them away and then come back. It was
a conveyor belt.
Well, so it got hectic down there. There's I don't want to give too much away, but Aaron Ferrante gives a hysterical account of his Pennsylvania punk rock story.
Awesome.
And it, you know, and you know him. He's a great frontman, but he's a better storyteller. You know, he likes to laugh. Do you know Aaron from Side Over?
Yes, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So he and I talked.
I should be seeing him Saturday. But by the time this airs, I'll be active.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go either yet.
Yeah. Side Over, one of the first bands I ever saw too. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, I love Side Over.
Yeah.
My wife was wearing a Side Over shirt yesterday.
Yes. Yeah. No. Dude, it's amazing. I'm just glad there's actual footage. I just think between everybody like throwing their 2 cents in, because you always got the people that exaggerate stuff. There's people like a few stuff, and then there's myth. So the fact that you got footage, that's so cool.
Oh, I have dudes who are still down with that program that admit that they were doing things that were probably shitty.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I don't know that anybody thought it was awesome when everything imploded down there.
Yeah.
And I think that the mission from Thomas was to tell his story and kind of let people know what actually it was, because I always thought there was a giant militarized like skinhead factory in the Lehigh Valley that just spit out these kids that were just insane. But there were 2 kids coming from Doylestown, 3 kids coming from up above Scranton, 4 kids coming from Reading, and the Reading dudes were like they were worrisome for sure.
The Unisound era going on.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah.
We have funny stories about Jake. A while back, someone was going to make a dramatization about the Unisound, and they asked me to play Jake.
It's funny. If anyone watches the full Pauly Sheer Terror Pennsylvania hardcore interview, because I got them all listed, he doesn't say nothing good about Jake. He actually, there's about 8 seconds I actually cut out, because if I allowed that, I didn't want the heat, even though I didn't say it. I spiced it out, but he basically dances around the fact that there's no alcohol and he serves candy. Like I was just like, yeah, it's like I'm not letting that. I'm not letting that actual word make the.
He used to hand out popsicles, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, but Pauly Sheer Terror, the Pennsylvania hardcore documentary. It's on this channel, Average Superstar TV. Go on,
check it out.
He doesn't say nothing too nice about Jake, but
yeah, there's a bunch of skinheads in the doc who also have weird pervy stories about Jake from the Unisound.
I just gotta stand up, like, even though I said I started coming around 93. I was never at a show at Unisound, so I wish I was, but that ended around 93ish, right?
Yeah, I feel like the window was so small. It was up from about 87 through 93 or 94.
Okay.
And by that time I already had my own venue. So I was going to less shows down there, but I did go to, oddly enough, shows that the windows got broken out of, because they were agnostic front, sick of it all. They're Bad Brains. They were the shows I wanted to see. So we did go down, and this was in an old supermarket, dude. So you remember when we were kids, giant windows on supermarkets. Someone would throw someone through one, and that's when the cops would get called. I think there's even a story about them breaking into breaking the windows of the store next door, and everybody ran in and grabbed a trinket, and everybody still brought their trinkets to the interviews. So it's not really as much about the music, although the music is a main character for sure. It's each one of these people who couldn't be more different, finding family and finding companionship and finding home within this circle of misfits. And some of those misfits would wear swastikas sometimes.
And it's one of those times now between I call it the light beer kids of Gen Z and stuff like how and the internet came along. It's like the stuff that you were saying freely, if you'd get wrecked at these shows. This was a time when
sure.
it's nothing. It's nothing like it was back then. But like back, I remember I had a rule myself of like when I'm at a show, if I don't like somebody, maybe I shouldn't say anything to anybody else because because there's one of two options. You either go up and tell them you don't like them and they deal with it, or you go up and you tell them that and it's throwdown time. And like I was such a misfit from where I was, living in Carbondale, Pennsylvania. I was like, when I come to this scene, I finally found a tribe. I'm like, I don't want any problems. So like, I never got in one fight with someone within the hardcore scene at least.
Well,
you mixed us with like a Slayer show. There'd be 30, 40 of us. Yeah, you better believe things happen. But
actually, one of the best shows I've ever seen in the Lehigh Valley was Halloween night 1987. It was Overkill, Motorhead, and Slayer at the Stabler Arena. And there probably was 400 skinheads there in the middle of the crowd. They owned the middle of the crowd for a Slayer show.
It's 1987 with those three bands you just named too. It's like there's a difference. There's a different era, a different aura because they were all in their prime then.
Oh yeah, dude. It was thunderous.
And now you got Testament and Overkill playing Reading coming up this year. Yeah, they're playing
Reverb.
Yep.
Oh, I might go to that.
And Sepultura is playing with at Reverb May 13th with Biohazard and Exodus for.
That's a great bill.
Yeah. So there's two shows right there for sure. Good for Chris on Mood and Reverb, but. I know we could sit here all day. Maybe we'll lap back. I want to definitely get your other films in here, but one of your other films is It Is What It Is. And I love this subject matter. Could you explain to the audience what this film's about?
Sure. It Is What It Is a documentary being put together by the Buffalino family, which is the Russell Buffalino family that was featured in The Irishman. Russell was known as the Quiet Don, and my grandfather's brother was his capo de capo, was his captain of captains. So I grew up within this sphere of adjacent crime family stuff. And so much like the Pennsylvania punk rock story, it comes from a very real place because, like I said, at my second year birthday party, the feds were across the street because all my uncles and all my grandfather's brothers and what have you were at my birthday party. So the FBI was there. So it
like almost like the beginning of the first Godfather. They're all outside taking pictures and
stuff.
Yeah,
they were douches.
Yeah,
but Joe Buffalino, who was Angelo Buffalino's son, is the feature in the film. He and his daughter. And they saw The Irishman and they were just appalled at some of the things they had said about Russell, who is, was close. We were all very close with him. My mother especially. My mother's in the film, and she's 78, and she talks about going down to Russell's house when she was a child, and my grandfather was doing some stonework for him, and he would make her pick candies, like guess which hand the candy was in and things like that. So it's not truly about any of the crime stuff, with the exception of the historical aspects of it. It's more so stories about Russell and his inner circle, and many of the philanthropic things they did, many of the Italian American Civil Rights League stuff is included. But we talk to this host of characters that is just so authentic. I had the opportunity to go out to Jersey and interview this gentleman. His name is Larry Rowley. He's 80 years old. He's fixed more horse races in America than any one man.
That's funny, but they're saying that
he was never a made man,
yeah.
But he is gangster AF, dude. At 80 years old, we walked in. He offered us an Italian sandwich, and then we went up to his little space and we shot him. He's just the guy, man. but that's just one of a host of these wonderful, like really rich characters. We talked with Joe Pesci's body double with regards to Pesci playing our Uncle Russell in the film, and it's feel good at time, man. It's feel good. It just takes a different look at a major league crime boss from the family side.
Gotcha. So yeah, so anyone who saw The Irishman, the beginning, especially De Niro's going up to Old Forge where he meets Russell with Joe Pesci, but that's Old Forge, PA, which is right outside of Scranton. So like when I remember I saw that, like as I wasn't that familiar with that family, I was just like, wow, it's like my home area and all that. But you're saying the family was not happy with that. So how was I guess they didn't have to sign off on the rights or to approve the story because it's historic. Is that what happened with Netflix?
Well, I don't think that Scorsese had any of that in mind. I think that he just did what he wanted and dramatized things and told a story about a family that maybe he didn't do a lot of the research that he should have. The family is now rebuting some of the things that were said in the film, and also in a book. There was a book that came out recently too called The Life We Chose. There was some stuff in that they also talk about. So it's this unique view from within the immediate family of a reputed Pennsylvania quiet Don mob boss.
Is he buried up in Old Forge?
He is buried in West Wyoming.
Okay. All right, gotcha. Wow. Yeah, dude. That's so. When is this out, or it's currently in the works?
It's in the works right now. We have the trailer coming out next week, and we're working away on it, man. We've had the opportunity to go to some really wild places. Joe Colombo was the gentleman who was reputed to be the boss of the 5 families in New York City back in the day. The biggest, the top of the heap, the top of the pyramid. He was shot on Columbus Circle in front of 10,000 people. He had a rally for his nonprofit called the Italian American Civil Rights League, and he formed it to sue the FBI for racist comments, citing that because of the FBI's reports, the general public believes that all Italians have to be involved with the mafia. So it became powerful enough to actually put Russell Buffalino and my uncle Dave Ostico on the set of The Godfather, redacting words out of the fucking script. They gave him chairs. We have the chairs in the film. It's just wild what goes on behind the scenes in some things, but it's we had the opportunity to go to Joe Colombo's house out in I don't know, maybe upstate New York, I think it was. It's like this wild, legendary mobster's house that's untouched. And his son Chris was about 6 years old when his father was killed, so he's still on the property. Just a wild dude that has wild stories, but he knew Russell as well, and he everybody kind of tells a little not your average crime boss story. He funded a lot of orphanages, just did things. He and his wife Carrie couldn't have kids, and he loved them, so he used some of his influence and some of his money and some of the other people's money to benefit underprivileged folks and children.
Coolness. So, before we get in your third film, make backtrack to the PA punk rock story. When's that supposed to be coming out?
They're all slated to hit by January
this month.
No.
2027.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then we get their third film, which is In-House, the Todd Terry story.
Yep, this is the one that my wife and I have been working on the longest. Todd Terry was a guy that I met in the early 2000s. He a company was built around him within the structure of BMG UK and some other big companies to manage producers and DJs. And he is known as the godfather of New York house music. He kind of created his own rugged dance sound, taking old disco records and chopping them up with break beats, and it's just really noisy, kind of beautiful, beautiful four on the floor house music. And he has inspired the work of hundreds of people. So I was his tour manager for a bunch of years in the late 90s and early 2000s. Rock and roll took me around the country in a van with 5 stinky dudes. This dude put me on a plane in first class. We had 2 record bags and 2 suitcases, and the first place he took me was Greece. I walked off the plane, and there was a 60-foot sign with his face on it, and it said "Todd is God." And I didn't really know the music, because talking about what we grew up with, I didn't really listen to dance music, but I was into traveling and I was into learning new things. So that was the beginning of some really wild travel and some even bigger, Europe and the Mediterranean do raves like nobody's business. We lived on the island of Ibiza for half the summer because he had a residency there. He still does right now, and I'm talking that he and I traveled together almost 20 years ago, and he's still doing his thing. So we had taken the time to talk to people like Armand van Helden and Josh Wink and the dudes from the Jungle Brothers, and just all these producers and hip hop people and actors and you name it. He kind of like has fans all over the world. So we have traveled a bit. We've gone to the UK and we've gotten to Atlanta, and we've gone out to Chicago and New York, just to interview the staples in this house music scene and have them talk fondly about this dude who is pretty gangster.
So is this still currently being filmed? Because I'm more blown away. Like you say, are all 3 of these filmed in post-production? Either way, you're a busy dude.
Yeah. Well, I'm also I easily hit walls. So having 3 projects to work on really kind of feeds into my ADHD and puts me, allows me to function at a higher level. Having that many irons in the fire, and then we kind of clean our palate by doing music videos in between.
That's awesome. It's kind of good too, because then you're not trying to just push the movie to the end, and sometimes you're forcing a. Right. I think every editor in the world has pushed through something and know as they walk away from the computer, like that last part isn't staying, and then the next day you wake up and you watch, you're like they just no. No.
Well, we've been in the field and we've been shooting all of them for 3 years, with the exception of It Is What It Is for only 1 year. However, they had been working on it and they kind of hit some walls production wise, and they hired us about a year ago. That being said, the Todd Terry film and the punk rock film, the content is already shot for the most part. The Is What It Is film will be shot over the next year, but all 3 are slated to drop, at around the holidays of this year.
Where are you going to have the premiere for the Pennsylvania punk rock story?
Well, I'm probably going to have to do it down there, and I don't know, maybe in this cool old jazz club called the Lafayette. We shot a lot of the interviews there, and they were really cool people. I don't know. I'm not familiar with any theaters down there, but I know that we'll probably do the other stuff at the Ritz.
I'm excited. I am so there, brother. I'm so pumped for this. Yeah.
Thanks for talking to me today, man.
You're covering an area that needs to be remembered. It does.
Yeah, and it's from the mouth. It's not a lot of shit talking. It's a lot of reminiscing, which really makes it, cool for people who weren't really into suicidal tendencies or, the Russian meat squats from Lehigh Valley. It more so deals with a lost generation that seemed to find themselves within the confines of aggressive music, slight danger, alcohol, and minor crime.
You named it all, because I remember even because I left the Scranton Wilkes-Barre area in '99 and I came to Philly. And, Philly was crazy when I first got down here. It's way calmed down, maybe around 2010-ish. But from the time I came to the scene to about 2015, I remember I would always park like blocks away if I could, because in case something broke out, I didn't want to be closed in. I didn't want my car damaged anyway. Like, there's like something like Cece's or something. You're kind of stuck there, but like anytime. But like now, I'm like, no, I'll park close to the venue because everything calmed down. But there was a dangerment of like, this is my path if poop hits the fan. Like you always had that. It also exciting too. It was exciting of not everybody got along.
Yeah, you definitely didn't want to park close to like a Eat the Turnbuckle show or something like that in Philly for sure. Might be bottles, might be like fluorescent tubes, or whatever else you could think of.
It could just be the rumors of like this one and this one's going to throw down, which means 3 on this one's going to jump in and it's like like. I just didn't like it. I didn't want the cops showed up. Like I didn't want to be stuck, like sitting in my car, like how long till I could. Right. I know what it was. It was from when I was a teenage kid. Like we'd go to the parties underage, and if it's a house party, the cops are gonna pull up and try to close in and get as many people as they could. They're not gonna be worried about a couple of kids running, through people's yards to get to they're not worried about a couple. They want to try to get the most they could. So I just kind of had that edge inside me. So. But I'm always thinking ahead. But again, I'm glad you're covering this because it's kind of weird. Like today you just don't get away with that. Like your trap. You were dealt with. That was it. Like you would go into the show and you were.
I think that you're gonna love some of these stories. These people were. After a while, because I talked with the same people over and over, they became super comfortable with telling me. And then I reached into the car and it was, there was a bottle and my gun, and I wasn't going to hit him with the bottle. So I grabbed the gun, but the barrel was facing me. So it was okay. They talk about this wild, extreme violence in such a casual, funny way that, it makes me wonder whether if we as Pennsylvania men just have this innate, necessity to mix it up, man. Like, because there wasn't a dude that we interviewed that didn't talk about some crazy caveman shit that, he saw or was part of. I'm looking forward to it coming together.
Beautiful, dude. James, this was an epic interview, dude. I thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It was fun
to come on to this again, especially you two comments. Feel free to the fire away. I always answer each one of them. And for everyone else, if you hit that subscribe button, it's the best compliment to me. You stand by for my film directory. But at this time, James, plug away anything you want where people could find you, anything you got going on.
Well, you can hit us at Camp Rattler. It's our primary, Instagram's our primary platform. You can kind of get our video drops, what's going on with movies. We do book covers, we do album covers, we do all kinds of marketing. We're getting ready to shoot a video for Brian Quinn's solo record. Brian Quinn, formerly of Burial Ground and Candlebox. It has a solo record coming out this year, and we just got the call to do that. So we have a bunch of fun stuff going on, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I thank you for coming on. I thank this audience for taking the time with all the podcasts going on in the world to check out this show. We'll let everybody know that the party is over. And most importantly, get off the internet.